truth is very simple, very hard to find.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of What's Going On. I'm your host, Tom D'Ambra. As always, we're very thankful you take the time from your busy day to watch our program. Well, my fellow Vermonters, Traitor Phil has struck again yesterday for the first time in, 243 years. A anti-rights, anti-gun bill was signed by a sitting governor here in the state of Vermont. And we're going to get into that to some extent. But I know a lot of you, I'm going to jump around a little bit here today, but I know a lot of you have been watching this facade about Facebook. Now, you got to understand something, folks. It's a ploy. It's a complete ploy. And how can I say that? I mean, first of all, let's understood that we have had this information for years from multiple sources. Edward Snowden, Julian Assange, all the way from Vault 4 to Vault 8 papers, have all discussed how they are monitoring us, how they are developing portfolios on us, how they're listening to our communications, where it's actually stored, what mechanisms they use, all of it. This is nothing new. So don't expect results here, my friends, because it's the just us system. And the just us system is meant to keep the little people little. But see, they have to put these dog and pony shows on for you. Zuckerberg knows very well that he's not going to be going to prison. He's not going to anything. Now, how would he know this? Every day, folks, over 87 million users have their privacy breached from Zuckerberg, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, and they've broken all kind of laws. How can I say this in confidence that nothing's going to come out of this? Well, one, I can say it because of these people never get in trouble. But what about this? This is from the Western Journal. Headline: Facebook handed out contributions to 85% of House committee ahead of the Zuckerberg questioning. Let me read that headline again to you. Facebook handed out contributions to 85% of the House committee ahead of the Zuckerberg questioning. Facebook admits Zuckerberg and executives use special privacy settings that no one else has or has access to. 87 million users having their privacy breached to foreign ad campaigns using the platform to allegedly divide America. Facebook has been making plenty of negative headlines of late. As Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg gears up to testify to Congress this week, the well-known figure will be facing off with lawmakers. Don't you believe that for a minute? Some of whom will be itching to confront him, and others who have been receiving financial gain from his company. Really? Who's been receiving financial gain from his company, folks? 85% of the people who are asking the questions. Members of the House and Senate committees will be questioning the CEO about privacy protection and the violations that have rocked the company as of late. As of late? Again, we've known about this for years. According to a report last week by USA Today, some of these lawmakers are also the biggest recipients of campaign contributions from Facebook employees directly and the political action committees funded by the employees. The congressional panel that received the most contributions from the company is the House Energy and Commerce Committee, whose lawmakers are set to question Zuckerberg on Wednesday. Of the 55 members of this committee, all but 9 of them have received contributions from Facebook. All but 9 of them, of the 55. Now, The average Democrat received $6,750 and the average Republican received $6,800. Well, you know what? Old Zuckerberg's pretty good. He's got them all paid off, and not one's getting more than the other. They're all in the same window, so there's no bickering here. We're all going to pay you evenly. Don't worry about nothing. It's just unbelievable. And folks, I'm not going to get into the rest of this for the sake of time. This isn't the main subject we're going to be covering today. But anyway, Republicans got 33% of the total campaign gifts. Democrats got 65%. And what's been accounted from the PAC committees is over $7 million worth of gifts. Unbelievable. So don't you think for 1 minute there's going to be any kind of liability held on Facebook or Zuckerberg, because you know what? What do you think? Facebook would not be able to do all this without what? The permission and the coordination of the NSA, and add on any alphabet agency you want to add to. So don't go looking for any surprises here, folks. This is strictly for your entertainment purposes only. That's how this is going to work out. Okay. Mr. Phil Scott, the traitor, the first governor in 243 years of this state to sign an anti-rights, anti-gun legislation. I hope you enjoy your first term there, Traitor Phil, because you are going down in history as the biggest traitor and the biggest personal disappointment that I have ever had voting for a governor. You got to understand something. Folks, I have not voted for a mainstream candidate for governor and or president since the 80s. Since the 80s. Now, I knew all the other governors before Traitor Phil, they did everything I expected them to do. They took away our rights. They raised our taxes. And then you get a guy like Traitor Phil who comes in, and because I have had conversations with him personally on EMS matters, but I really thought the man would be true to his words. I really thought that this man had a little bit of backbone. But he doesn't. He's a rouge. That's what Traitor Phil is. And I'll tell you something, Traitor Phil. For the rest of your life, any public appearance you make, people are going to remind you of the treachery that you have put to the American people, particularly the state of Vermont. The state of Vermont, my friends, has been for as long as I've been here, 1985, has always been in the top safest state, in the nation. And usually they were the very top. Because you know why? Everybody else had very strict gun laws. And if you look at the comparison here, Vermont still is one of the safest. Why? Because everybody had guns. The more guns, the less crime. Because, Mr. Traitor Phil, if you really wanted to do something about school safety, how about commissioning a committee to look into the relationships of psychotropic drugs and violence? How about you commission a committee how UNESCO, United Nations Education, Scientific, Cultural Organization, controls the criteria and the curriculum for all public schools in this nation? Why don't you look into how morality is affected by the secular teachings of the public school? And not to mention, Traitor Phil, the unbelievable amount of monies that the average Vermonter puts into this secular, dumbed-down system of indoctrination. This isn't over, Traitor Phil. I'm here to tell you, you have actually done people like me a favor, And I'm going to tell you why. Because a lot of people who are on the couch are now getting off the couch. Yeah, you've had your little victory here. You can snicker away how you made this work, how you put a ploy over the people who put you in office. But you've just lost that base. Don't unpack all your bags at the State House, Traitor Phil. I have a feeling you're not going to be a resident of the State House for too long. And by the way, folks, there will hopefully be organizations like Gun Owners of Vermont and others at the national level who will bring lawsuits into this equation. Who's going to pay for them lawsuits? You and I. We are going to pay for the corporation State of Vermont, Inc. to go to court, when the courts are controlled by who? State of Vermont, Inc., to keep and take our rights away. We're going to finance it. Think of that. It doesn't work, Traitor Phil. If taking away guns kept people safe, Chicago and Baltimore would be the utopias, safe havens of the country. But what are they? They're the murder capitals of the country. It's unbelievable. And look at history, Traitor Phil. How is it you're a governor? I have to assume you can read. I have to assume that you know how to read. So why don't you read some books on history and what's taken place to any nation, any people, any civilization, at any time in the recorded history of man, what has happened to a disarmed people? Traitor Phil. This man disarmed his people. The only people that had weapons in his regime were the government. Now, our government wouldn't do us any harm, right? And I know for you who watch this program on a regular basis, and we're very thankful for that, know all about this document. This is Operation Northwoods. I got into this a little bit last week, just to be real quick, how they were going to foment attacks on the military personnel at Guantanamo Bay in Cuba, how they were going to foment riots in Miami and in Washington, D.C., how they were going to shoot down airplanes with college students on it, how they were going to mark the aircraft, use open channel of communication so everybody can hear it. This wasn't some covert operation, folks. This was overt in the sense that this was in writing. This got approved by the Joint Chiefs of Staff. This got approved by the Secretary of Defense, Robert McNamara, and this was going to JFK's, President Kennedy's desk for his signature to do it. Think of that. The United States government in 1962, I believe it is, yes, 13 of March 1962, had this in writing. It went through all the proper channels it was supposed to go through for an operation, for a military operation. It was funded. But our government, actually it's their government, folks. It's not our government. It's their government. It's the bankers' government. It's not our government. You've got to understand this. We have lost control of the government, and don't you dare think we got it back with Trump, because we don't. Because I'm not so sure what's going on with Trump, and I'm certainly of this. I certainly can qualify that he does not have control of the strings of government. And he's gone back on his words on a lot of things, particularly with funding abortion and so forth. But this document proves to the American people, and you can go online and read the whole thing, that we were going to be used for cannon fodder to bring in another war, and yet another war, and yet another war, and yet another war, and yet another war. You bleed, they profit. And Traitor Phil is now part of this club. Traitor Phil is not looking out for the well-being of Vermont. Traitor Phil is looking out for the political ploys of the George Soroses and the Bloombergs and the Andrew Cuomos and et cetera, and et cetera, and et cetera. Remember these targets. We showed these many times. We had these, I know, last week. And I went through with this, you guys, with this. But you look at these targets, folks. Look at the label on the top right-hand side. This is Department of Homeland Security. These are called desensitization targets. And again, we have a pregnant woman. We have a young child. We have an elderly female. The three most sacred things for Western civilization. Desensitization targets. So the people with the guns, people from the government, will have no problem shooting the most sacred entities of our culture, our pregnant women, our young children, and our elderly. There's a reason why this is here, my friends. There's a reason why we had Jade Helm in 2016. And now we have this historical, which I just think history sometimes just puts this right on you. We have Goebbels to my left, and we have David Hogue to my right. Goebbels, the propaganda minister, and Hogue, the youthful idiot who's got the world figured out. You know, maybe I'll vote for this 13-year-old kid who's running for governor here in Vermont, because hell, when I was 13, I had the world figured out. Didn't you? Oh, and what about Mr. Hogue's statement last week, or actually 2 weeks ago now, I didn't get to it last week, that he thought that a bacterium or a virus that would kill billions of human beings, quote unquote, kill billions of human beings, would be good for the environment. Where do you think he was taught that? Well, you should know. You paid for it. The public fool system. These kids can't count change back to you, but they've got the world figured out enough that they know you need to turn your guns in, Mr. and Mrs. America. And let's not forget this graft here. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. This was R.J. Rummel's work, and we got into this in depth last year. But don't forget, folks, you see the 3 zeros at the top. This is all in millions. So these are all murders of non-combatants. Non-combatants, you know them as civilians, that were murdered by government in the 20th century. And think about this, most of them were their government. What's the tally from R.J. Rummel's extensive research? 262 million non-combatants were murdered by government in the 20th century. And I tell you what, Traitor Phil, you should watch this show, because we went through this last week. All of these people were what? Disarmed, Traitor Phil. They really benefited by being disarmed, Traitor Phil. Don't pack your bags, guy. You're not staying long. You're not staying long. I'll tell you, you've done us a favor. As Yoyomoto said, you have awoken a sleeping giant, Traitor Phil. Now, let's look at some historical people here. I know we had this chart last week too, but folks, it just sums it up. George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, Lincoln, Gandhi, Martin Luther King Jr. were all pro-Second Amendment. All pro-Second Amendment. None of them were financed by the bankers. None of them. But who did the bankers finance? King George III, Hitler, Stalin, Mao Zedong, King Jong-il, Barack Obama. All financed by the bankers. The ones who took the guns got the funding from the bankers, and the ones who maintained rights of the people for self-defense, not a penny from the bankers. So what do the bankers want? They want an ignorant, dumbed down, ill, apathetic, disarmed populace, Traitor Phil. Traitor Phil. Name sort of sticks, doesn't it? Remember Mao Zedong when he said to his people, after the bankers had thrown out disfunded Chiang Kai-shek, threw him and his people on Formosa, you know it as Taiwan, and then put Mao Zedong in power, while they were being disarmed, what did he tell his 212 lieutenants, if you would, the upper echelon of his regime? It's time to make omelets. And then he let everyone think about it. And then he continued, now that the people are disarmed, it is time to make omelets. And to make omelets, you must crack eggs. Let us make omelets. And depending who you read, between 62 million and 80 million Chinese were murdered. Why, Traitor Phil? Because they were disarmed and financed by bankers. How'd that work out for this poor soul? And we broke this picture down for you last week. The nonchalant murder, the man on his knees, the children in the background. We broke it all down for you. Why is this man on his knees about to have a bullet in his probably 124 grain 9mm Luger in the back of his cranium? Why? Because he ain't got the guns, Traitor Phil. The government's got the guns. You know this kid David Hogg, the other thing besides that comment he made, he said, oh, you can hear the powers shaking. Yeah, the powers are shaking because they're so excited because they're disarming the people. Traitor Phil. You treacherous, treacherous. But that's okay. They've got it figured out. Look what's going on in the city of London. Breitbart. After nearly 100 years of gun control, London now adding knife control. London's mayor, Sadiq Khan, a Muslim. Sadiq Khan, yeah, that sounds like a real good traditional British name, doesn't it? Used a tweet to go after knives with verbiage similar to gun control rhetoric. He said, listen to what this guy says, Traitor Phil. Is this your next move? No excuses. There is never a reason to carry a knife. So all you people in Vermont, including myself, that carry pocket knives, you have no excuse for that. None. How dare you? You should be arrested. Absolutely. Your rights of carrying a knife do not exist. Your rights to self-defense do not exist. Do they not, Traitor Phil? On April 2nd, 2018, Britain began an incremental adoption of stringent gun control laws beginning in 1920. The controls were ratcheted up during the decades that followed until the hoops one had to jump through for legal handgun ownership. There's a problem right there. Legal handgun ownership. Folks, what's the difference between legal and lawful? Understand this. If it's legal, you're getting screwed. The system is meant to keep the little people little. And I'm running out of time already. Anyway, I'm going to stop this right here, folks. But what else I want to get into with you real quick. Why do you think Asians eat with chopsticks? Do you know why? Because, I believe it was the Ming Dynasty, but don't hold that to me. Asians eat with chopsticks because they were legally forbidden from having knives. The only people who would have knives would be people who had licenses to have a knife, such as a chef or something along that line. Think of that. And this is where it's going, folks. Don't say, oh, it'll never happen here. It is happening here. And Traitor Phil is a big part of the puzzle. That's why Asians eat with chopsticks, because they were not allowed to have knives or forks. They had to have legal permission to have a knife or a fork. Think of that. Now, what we need to do as a people is what the two gentlemen we're about to show, two clips to you. Take heed at these people's presentation, their language, their delivery, and their emotion. They've had it. They're getting off the couch. And this is what they fear the most. They being the bankers. And all of their ploys and all of their youthful and useful idiots like Traitor Phil and David Hogue. Bill, if we could, let us go ahead and roll these clips, and then, folks, we will see you on the return. But listen to what these two gentlemen have to say.
I've heard a whole lot of people in here talking tonight about this group and that group, and domestic violence, and blacks, these minorities and that minority. What I want to know is, when are you all going to start standing up for the majority? And here's who the majority is. I'm the majority. I'm a law-abiding citizen who's never shot anybody, never committed a serious crime, never committed a felony. I've never done anything like that. But it seems like every time we have one of these shootings, nobody wants to put the blame where it goes, which is at the shooter's feet. You want to put it at my feet. You want to turn around and restrict my right, constitutional right that's spelled out in black and white. You want to restrict my right to buy a firearm and protect myself from some of the very people you're talking about in here tonight. It's ridiculous. I don't think Rod Serling could come up with a better script. It does not make any sense. The law-abiding citizens of this community and many communities around this country, we're the first ones taxed and the last ones considered and the first ones punished when things like this happens, because our rights are the ones that are being taken away. That's the reason why I came down here today. Gun show or no gun show, NRA or no NRA. I'm here to stand up for the law-abiding citizens of this community, because I'm going to tell you that what's going to happen. You can take the guns away from us all you want to. You all write a law, I follow the law, I'll bring my guns down here, I'll turn them in. But here's what's going to happen. The Crips and the Bloods on the other side of town, they're not going to turn their guns in. They're going to hold on to them. And what's going to happen when you have to send the police down there to go take them? The police can barely enforce the law as it is. As what I see, we demonize the police, criminalize and vilify the police, and we make the criminals into victims. And we're talking about restricting guns? How are you going to do that? How are you going to do that when the police department's already hamstrung? You're not going to be able to go down here and take these guns from these criminals. So the criminals are going to hold on to their guns. They're still going to have them. They're still going to break in my house, and they're still going to shoot me with them. And guess who's going to be the one that suffers? It's going to be me. Well, I'm here to tell you tonight, it is not going to happen without a fight. And when I say fight, I don't mean shots fired. I don't mean fist thrown. I mean I'm going to come down here to this city council and raise hell just like these loonies from the left do until you listen to the majority of the people in this city. And I am the majority. The majority of the people in this city are law-abiding, and they follow the law, and they want their constitutional right to be able to bear arms. They want to be able to go to the gun show and buy a hunting rifle or a sport rifle. There are no military-grade weapons sold at the gun show. An AR-15 is not a military-grade weapon. Anybody that would go into combat with an AR-15 is a fool. It's a semi-automatic 22 rifle. You'd be killed in 15 minutes in combat with that thing. So we need to dispel all these myths, and we need to drop all this all this division that we got going on here. Because the bottom line is, when that Second Amendment was written, whether the framers liked it or not, they wrote it for everybody. And I am everybody. And the law-abiding citizens of this city are everybody. And we want our rights, and we want to keep our rights. And by God, we're going to keep them, come hell or high water.
Henson Ange, followed by Justin Holstrom, Jason Tetlow, Thomas Philippides, number 659. Thank you. Please proceed.
Yeah. My name is Henson Ong. Forgive me, English is not my first language. I am a legal immigrant, and I am an American by choice. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to express my opinion and give my testimony in opposition to the majority of the proposed bills which do nothing to deter future crimes. Gun control does not work. Your own history is replete with high school rifle teams, Boy Scout, marksmanship merit badges. You could buy rifles at the hardware stores. You could order them, mail order, delivered to your home. Your country was awash in readily available firearms and ammunition. And yet, in your past, you did not have mass school shootings. Other people have already expressed the question, what changed? It was not that the availability of guns suddenly exploded or increased. It actually was decreased. What was changed was societal decay. If gun control actually did work, Washington, D.C. and Chicago would be the safest cities in your nation, but it is not. They have the toughest gun laws and the highest crime and murder rates. Now, some people have asked and called the AR-15. They called the AR-15 a weapon of mass killing. Well, it turns out that there are a few government agencies which disagree with that characterization. The Department of Homeland Security has stated that a rifle chambered in 5.56 NATO with a 30-round magazine is suitable for personal defensive use. I have documentation on that. It is HSCEMS-1212-00011, solicitation for the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency. Now, who needs an AR-15 with 30-round mags? That question has also been brought up. And I would like to put forward that had the Koreans in the LA riots not had AR-15s and AK-47s with 30-round magazines and Ruger 30s, their businesses would have been burned to the ground like all of the other businesses in their neighborhoods. Theirs stood because they stood their ground. I would also put forward the conjecture that had the 10,000 students at Tiananmen Square not been unarmed, things may not have resulted in so many of them disappearing. In your own laws, United States versus Miller, 309, U.S. 174, 1939, it was made clear that the type of firearms protected by the Second Amendment were those specifically useful and common for military use in defense of the state. I would like to note that the state is not the government. The state is the people. In Lewis,
Excuse me, Mr. Ong, if you would.
in Lewis versus United States, 1980, it is stated that the Second Amendment guarantees no right to keep and bear a firearm that does not have some reasonable relationship to the preservation and efficiency of a well-regulated militia. It has nothing to do with hunting. The militia, as per the debates in the convention, shows plainly enough that it is composed of all males physically capable of acting in concert for common defense. And further, that ordinarily, when called for service, these men were expected to appear bearing arms supplied by themselves and of a kind in common use at the time. The AR-15 is the most common and popular rifle in America at this time.
Would you please wrap up?
I will wrap up. I would like to wrap up with a statement from Judge Andrew Koznitsky in Silveria versus Lockyer, 2003. My excellent colleagues have forgotten these bitter lessons of history. The prospect of tyranny may not grab the headlines the way vivid stories of gun crime usually do, but few saw the Third Reich coming until it was too late. The Second Amendment is a doomsday provision, one designed only for those exceptionally rare circumstances when all other rights have failed. A free people can only afford to make this mistake once.
Thank you.
That is very striking, isn't it? Traitor Phil, were you listening? Were you listening, Traitor Phil? I hope you were. I don't think it's going to do you any good anymore because you're a traitor, Traitor Phil. You realize you're not going to go down in history as Governor Phil Scott. By the way, do you know what your last name means? Scott, freedom. Scott Tish, free man. You're even turning your back on your own bloodlines, you traitor, Phil. You're not Governor Scott, you're Traitor Phil. Scott to be free. Scottish, free man. I mean, as a kid, people used to say, oh, he got away scot-free. That's where that saying came from, folks. And you're going to make a lot of Irish out of us, aren't you? Irish, angry man. Now, let us continue real quick with another, don't know what's going on here with Mr. Trump. He could go down as one of the biggest traitors known to man. But I am suspecting, as we all know, he does not have control, folks. He tells the American people one thing, and then we find out from research completely the opposite's going on. Is he a typical politician lying to us? I really don't think so. Is he capable of lying? Absolutely. I'm not saying the man's perfect, but I don't think he has control, folks. He doesn't. Now, last night, there was a hotline conversation between President Putin of Russia and President Trump of USA, Inc. And what it comes down to is this. The United States is jumping to conclusions without any investigation from any international sources. And now Russia has implemented an investigation and said that it's a ploy. And now the UN has come out and said, we cannot confirm this attack even took place. But the World Health Organization comes out and says, well, yeah, it took place and there's 50 dead and 123 to 128 were ill. But doesn't add up. Headline, Sputnik News. Several countries, including the United States, has blamed Damascus for staging an alleged chemical attack in Douma, despite the fact that a probe into the incident has not been launched yet. The Russian defense minister said Monday that doctors of the Syrian Douma and medics of the SAA, that would be the Syrian Arabian Army, have received no patients, 0 patients, with any signs of chemical poisoning. Representatives of the Reconciliation Center interviewed doctors, nurses, employees of the hospitals in the city of Douma. They denied the reports about allegedly receiving patients with symptoms of chemical poisoning, they said in a press release. At the same time, employees of the Syrian Red Crescent Society have not recorded any cases of poisonings caused by a chemical attack in the time period, talk about the 2-day period, the organization's spokesman told Sputnik. We, as the Red Crescent organization, have not recorded one case for the past 2 days since our doctors did not work because of the latest series of events. The statement that was issued on behalf of the Red Crescent Anyway, folks, I'm running out of time on this. Anyway, I got to jump around here, folks. But what they're trying to say is that we've got local hospitals, local doctors, we've got non-government charitable organizations, something similar to the Red Cross, all stating not one patient, not one, with chemical signs or symptoms. Russian foreign minister said before that the information attacks about the alleged use of chemical weapons by the Syrian government forces were aimed at covering up terrorists and justifying possible external military action. The minister warned against military action based on far-fetched and fabricated reports. Any attacks will have severe consequences. Okay, I'm going to stop here, folks, for the sake of time. Now, what we have found out in this conversation between Trump and Putin last night on the hotline, they one-on-one, is that Putin has had it. The Russian people have had it, folks. They did this in 2013. They did this when Trump first took office. And, of course, it was the same group, the White Helmets. The White Helmets are financed by who? Can you say George Soros? Again, they were caught lying in 2013, they were caught lying in 2015, 2016, and now they're caught again in 2018. So, Mr. Trump, why do you not allow the international community, the OPCW, etc., to go in there and do a complete investigative work before you start World War III? Because in this conversation, Mr. Putin let Mr. Trump know that the Russians are going to intervene here. They're going to shoot with their S-400 defense system. They are not only going to take the missiles out, as many as they can, they are going to attack the platforms from which they are launched from. Can you say submarines? Can you say surface ships? Can you say aviation? And let us remind the American people that this whole thing has been an orchestration of lies, and let us remind the American people that we showed you last week about how they came up with the plans to take 7 countries in 5 years, and the only one left we have not attacked is Iran. And what's the last 2 countries that the international bankers do not control the money system of? You guessed it, Syria and Iran. Again, the bankers profit, your sons and daughters bleed, and you foot the bill. Oh, by the way, the federal government collected $76 billion in sweat equity from you in the first fiscal quarter. Not bad. The only problem is they were still $7 billion in the hole. How's that for good fiscal responsibility, huh? And the funding for abortion was risen. So, Bill, if we could, let us show the film of children in Syria being trained to be crisis actors. And you may say, oh, how these people are terrible, exploiting children like this. What do you think the public fool system just did with your kids? Oh, and by the way, you didn't hear about it in the mainstream media, but do you know 350 student organizations did a walkout this week against abortion? Funny how you didn't see that in the mainstream media. They went out for 17 minutes to pray for the 9 babies that were murdered on average time span of 17 minutes. So, Bill, if we would, let's roll this film and let's watch crisis actors being developed. do you think of that, folks? There you go. Do you remember when we showed you them filming the guy supposedly drowning? Remember that? There's your children, folks. Because it gets back to the Hegelian dialectic, doesn't it? Crisis, reaction, solution. Create the crisis, get the emotional response you want from the people, bring in the solution. Unfortunately, the solution this time is World War III. So back to the conversation between Putin and Trump. I'm sorry I jumped around. My apologies. Putin told Trump, we are going to not only just take these missiles down, as many as we can. Oh, by the way, at $40 million a whack, how's that for your tax bill? And we're going to attack the platforms they're launched from. And, are you ready? The big and? Russia has put first strike options back on the table. What does that mean, Tom, you may ask me? That means that if Russia determines that things start to escalate out of hand, they're going to push all the buttons. Self-assured, they call it MAD, mutually assured destruction. Think about that, Mr. Trump. And, Mr. Trump, we were supposedly getting out of Syria. You reported it to the world. Headline, Sputnik News. U.S. has established yet another new base on the Manbij front line. Abdul Adil, commander of the Manbij Military Council within the Syria's Democratic Forces, has told Sputnik that the United States is now deploying yet another 2,000 troops into Syria and is building a new base and expanding a already established military base in the Manbij Military Council. Now I don't have the time to read this whole thing. He gets into all of it. Where they are, 300 U.S. troops are here, blah, 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 armored vehicles, all this, okay? Another 2,000 troops into Syria, folks. And let's remember, who is the only invited nations from the elected government of Syria? Russia and Iran. We are invaders. Do you get what I'm saying to you? And let's not forget that China, on the other side of the world, has tied up 3 of our carrier groups. And now Harry S. Truman left Norfolk yesterday to head to the Med. Why are they going to Med? Because of Syria. Are you ready for World War III, my friends? I will say to you unequivocally, I am 59 years old. The world is closer to MAD, mutual assured destruction, than at any time in my lifetime. We are moments away from World War III, should the shooting begin in earnest. Traitor Phil, I'm not going to speak of you anymore at this episode, but you and your like are bringing MAD to the American people. Now, Bill, if we could blow this picture up for the viewing audience, that'd be awesome. Thank you. You see this photo? This photo is a recent photo of a classroom, and I believe it was the state of California, but this could be any classroom around the country. I want you to take a look at this. What is happening is this woman who purports to be a teacher. Look at the culture of our society. Look at this teacher. Look at the clothing. Look at her presentation. There's a problem right there, isn't it? But the student to the right, the young lady, I believe it is holding the American flag, and the teacher wants everyone to say the Pledge of Allegiance. Look at the students. You got the 2 not sure what gender we are kids on the left. You got the 1, 2, 3, maybe, well, I can't see down the bottom here. We have 3 students given the Black Power fist. We have another young man. I don't know if he can understand what he's doing in the sense of, I don't think he's got his hands behind his back because he's protesting the American flag. But he's not interested in the flag right there, is he? He's more interested in the young lady. Look at this classroom, folks. This is Classroom USA today. This is Classroom USA today. And let's not forget the incredible expense that we pay for this garbage. My friends, we're very thankful that you take the time from your busy day to watch our program. We always close in asking you to seek truth, obtain knowledge, and manifest kindness to your fellow man. And we always close in reminding you that your government is your responsibility. Get off the couch, get active. We thank you for watching.
Got to read between the lines. Got to read between the lines. Well, the truth is